So here's the thing about Jeff Fox. He never ever forgot where he came from. Raised in North Carolina in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, his family was never extravagantly wealthy, but they were rich where it really counted, in love, in good values. Jeff's dad used to come home from the furniture factory exhausted to find his son holding a baseball, ready to play ball. Jeff, the ball player, went on to win Hall of Fame honors in high school before starting all 4 years at UNC Asheville in a lineup that featured the current manager of the St. Louis Cardinals. A knee injury ended Jeff's dream of playing in the majors. But he continued playing amateur while he got a job with the Secret Service, protecting President Bill Clinton. And after 9/11, Jeff became a federal air marshal, protecting us all. That's when he met the love of his life, Christina, a flight attendant with whom he traveled twice a week between Washington, D.C. and San Francisco. After they got married in 2008, Jeff, normally possessing a tough exterior, doted over Christina and their dog Bella, his girls, he called them, as his career continued with the CIA, then the Department of Defense. All the while, he called his wonderful mom and dad every week just to tell them he loved them. Jeff got sick a few months ago and passed away in mid-March at the young age of 52. Now his family and friends want to celebrate the life of Jeff Fox, the man who never forgot where he came from. And joining us to talk about him, Chris Cardinale, a close friend of Jeff's. Chris, another friend says this about Jeff, and I want to ask you if it rings true for you. Jeff Fox made all of us feel better for being around him, both in ways we know and can feel, and even more importantly, in all the other ways that just rub off on you over the years. Like way too many of our fellow Americans whose lives were cut short by COVID, Fox's familiar habits, mannerisms, and expressions we slowly embraced over time now become ours together to carry on. Is that the case for you? And if so, can you tell us which ones?
Yeah. Well, let's. The one that won't carry on is that Christmas sweater that he wore. That was an annual tradition that we had around here, and Jeff and Christina were always, good sports and brought the goods on those nights. Yeah, Jeff. Listen, I think you nailed it. Jeff was he was all in on everything he did. I mean, everything. He had a sense of clarity and purpose about him that you don't see in many people. Whether he was on the job or on the ball field or umpiring or spending time with his friends and family, he was always prepared. He was always present. He was in the moment. He had a strong set of values that also made him quite complex. On the one hand, he had a deep sense of duty and sacrifice, values you just touched on, and of country. But what made him unique is that he had an equally deep sense of community and compassion and care for others. Jeff really believed in the government he protected, the country he served, and those of us, his friends, that he kept. But it wasn't simply that those were good things. It was a belief that they all needed to be better and that they could be better. Being friends with Jeff, like you mentioned, he expected as much from us as he did from himself. And that made each and every one of us, better. That was Jeff Fox.
And just to your point, I worked for a president and have the privilege of knowing people in the Secret Service. It is a job where the job definition is you're willing to take a bullet for the person you protect. Where did that deep desire to protect come from?
It had to be his mother and father, Martha and Jerry. Martha's sense of loyalty is obvious in Jeff, and Jerry's sense of duty and service is there as well. But Jeff didn't really talk about his service much in the Secret Service or the CIA, because for him it didn't serve a purpose. He knew what he was doing and why he was serving. He would talk about the people he met, the people that cared about him along the way. He was very proud to serve President Clinton and then, President Bush. And he was proud of law enforcement and the sacrifices, those men and women make. But Jeff, didn't just protect presidents and citizens. He protected institutions. Jeff on the ball field was just as serious about protecting, the fundamental pillars of baseball, how to wear your uniform, let's not wear your uniform like that. That's a good picture, but how to wear your uniform, don't make the first out at home. He was as serious on the ball field as he was at his job. And that's, again, really why he was unique. He was truly one of a kind.
And then there are the love stories with his friends, with his parents, and with his girls, Christina and the dog. Talk about that.
Listen, talk about sacrifice. Christina sacrificed. She had to sit in the stands for probably one too many games for her, but she became the moment he met her. And I remember, when he was traveling in the air marshal and he would, cross country and land in just to play a game. And he started to Jeff was not originally the married type. And then all of a sudden something happened. And he started talking about this girl he met, while I was up in the air. And next thing you know, she showed up at a few games, and, the rest is history. Christina and Bella are the loves of his life.
We have never, in the year and 2 months that we've been doing this, had anyone come on, but now I don't know that I could do it any other way. And for that, I'm grateful to you, Chris. Thank you so much for doing this. It's so hard to talk about someone you've lost. It's hard for me, and I didn't even know him. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. We're so sorry for your loss. Thank you for talking about your friend today.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.